All right, guys, welcome back to another Master and Apprentice video and podcast. How we doing, Afton?
We doing? How you doing, Shammy?
All right, so today we have our next part in the Lego investing series. First part, we talked about the genres, different genres for Lego Star Wars, Lego Marvel, Lego Harry Potter, so on and so forth, Lego Avatar, right? All these examples. The next part, we weren't going to do minifigures, but I thought a more prudent part instead of minifigures were the set types. And we'll get right into that in a second. We just want to kind of give some quick pointers. This is mostly going to be, our example is mostly going to be Lego Star Wars because of two things. Lego Star Wars is the biggest genre for Lego, right? When you look up Lego, what sets do they make the most of? It's Lego Star Wars. What sets increase the most in value? It's Lego Star Wars, right? That on top of us being a Star Wars YouTube channel, that's just what we look at the most. That's just what is most prudent. And then secondly, lastly,
We are not certified for legal reasons. This is not our advice. This is our opinion.
this is prime advice.
Yeah,
if
prime.
We'll get prime in trouble.
Yep.
All right, we'll get right into the actual what sets there are, right? So the first one we're going to touch up on, we're going to kind of go from highest to lowest, is the icons set, right? This is kind of a series, but it's more of a set type, and it's all of these big ones. Some examples, most recently we have, for instance, the Eiffel Tower. This is a real big set. I can't remember, I thought it was like 4 feet or something like that. $630. Rivendell, that one's one of them. I will touch on that. The Titanic or the Colosseum. Those are some of the biggest ones. Right? They're these big sets. They're kind of like the UCS sets from Star Wars, but they're more universal, right?
Next, we got UCS. I'm going to tie that in a little bit with Master Builder Series. There's one after that. There's a big distinct difference between the two of them. These are technically exclusive to Star Wars, but as Sammy stated, there's a lot of icon series that look a lot like these things, like the Titanic. You can't tell me that the Titanic is so much different than the Imperial Star Destroyer. That is very similar to Titanic. It's a huge set, cost a ton of money. The intention for these is to make it to scale for Star Wars at least. So I'll give you a good example. The AT-AT they made, it's on minifigure scale just about accurately. And you put a minifigure up to it, and it's like, yeah, that's 100% minifigure scale. If you go back to, I believe, 2018 it is, you'll see a Death Star 2. Sadly, that's not minifigure scale because then it would literally be the size of Paris. But they do have a small ship going out of the Death Star, and it is a 1-to-1 ratio with that ship. So they're just kind of supposed to be cool display sets that make sense for their size. A big outlier
to source material is their goal.
Exactly. A big outlier you'll see is the Republic gunship. Our video, go look at that. We insulted a little bit. I bought it. It's a cool looking set, but it doesn't make sense whenever you put it up there. And they even describe that. But anyways, that's UCS Ultimate Collector Series. Master Builder is the other one. The distinct difference between the two of these is minifigures. The minifigures in the UCS 1, 2, sometimes 3. You can have some more sometimes, but the set is the main thing. Master Builder Series, the main thing about it is the amount of minifigures, and it's a scene typically. So for Star Wars, a good example is the Mos Eisley Cantina that's out right now. That one has 21 minifigures. Trail at Cloud City, 21 minifigures. And then they have an Ewok Village. I don't remember how many minifigures it has, but I'm looking at a picture of it, and it looks like easily 15. Basically, it's a cool set, and it's pretty to scale for the most part. I think it's to scale 100% for these 3 examples at least, but it has a ton of minifigures. And then one of these, it's exclusive to Star Wars, but a translation would be the Daily Bugle that's out right now, and the Lord of the Rings Rivendell. It's a to-scale set, but it's supposed to be a scene in somewhere. They have tons of minifigures. Yeah, this Lord of the Rings has 21 minifigures as well. Daily Bugle is a new record for the most minifigures.
Then we go to the diorama. What I did for diorama, I would kind of, and I was explaining to Afton off camera, anything with the plaque. So for instance, right there, up in my corner, Grogu, right? It's I don't think it's 18, I think it's like 16 plus, maybe 12 plus, but it comes with a little plaque and it says Grogu on it, blah, 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 blah. or the Captain Rex helmet, or the Mandalorian helmet, or some of the new ones they're doing, like the Endor speeder bike chase, right? The ones that have the plaques on it, and they're not really accurate per se to like the ships or the minifigures, but they're kind of like the more affordable UCS sets, right? And what M&R Productions said one time was he had a question and someone had said, will there ever be UCS sets that are more affordable? Because most UCS sets are anywhere from $350 to like $800, right? And that's a big price point. Most 18 plus sets, the diorama sets, are like $100 tops, like anywhere from like 50 to 100, right? Those are pretty much the more affordable UCS sets for Star Wars. Or, there's a couple other ones like the Flower series, right? It's a display, it's a diorama. So I kind of put all the ones that just have a plaque, or they just say 18 plus on it for diorama sets, because they all are just typically for display. All the ones we just stated, the icons, UCS, Master Builder, diorama, helmets, they're all 18 plus. So when I say 18 plus, I'm not necessarily referring to those bigger ones. I'm referring to all the small ones. Usually they have a black box and they'll say 18 plus right on it because they're mostly meant for display is the biggest thing. And then the next one we have is playset. The cost, it changes every year. They usually have a couple of different play sets. Usually for a year, they'll release one big set, right? Last year, it was Cad Bane's Justifier, $170. Then they released a couple other ones, like $100 one, right? The Inquisitor Scythe. They'll release a couple of different sets for that year that are considered play sets. These are supposed to have a couple of different things. They're supposed to have a decent amount of accuracy from minifigure and the actual build. But they're supposed to also be pointed towards children, like they're play sets. But more recently, they have been kind of getting into putting it together for collectors, right? Because play sets usually aren't all that cheap anymore. They used to be cheaper, but they're not cheap anymore, to be honest, right? Play sets, as we get on to this coming 2024 year, 2023 year, we're going to see they're not as cheap as they used to be. So we'll talk about that a little bit more. There's just so much to play sets that you can't really dumb it down to one thing. They'll usually have like a corner displaying what genre it is, and that's really all there is for those.
Next category we have, next type was the Advent calendar. It can give you some unique characters and unique minifigures that you're never going to get again. For example, this last year, Sammy pointed out, when's the last time you seen Darth Vader with some swimming flippers on? That's a dumb little minifigure right there. That's just fun. It's cool. And you're never going to see it again.
What we have is battle packs. This is tied to play sets. It really is. But I had to put it on it separate because battle packs are so unique in itself. They're like a miniature play set / Master Builder series, right? It's mostly about the minifigures, right? And they're usually for Star Wars, they release 2 a year, but this is mostly tied into with Star Wars. What happens is usually it's an army builder. That's usually what they advertise for it. Sometimes they're not very good for army building, as we'll give some examples later on. But battle packs, usually $20 now. They used to be $15. They're $20 now, and they usually have 4 minifigures, right? And that's their biggest thing. They release about 2 a year, at least 1 a year, and they're tied to play sets, but they're a little bit separate, and I had to mention them.
So the next one we have is Brickheads. Brickheads is kind of tough because technically Star Wars is a series, Marvel is a series, and Brickheads is technically its own series. But if you look at any Brickheads Lego set, it's, here is the Avatar Brickhead set. It's just a hybrid. It's something to do with every other set. You take a character or two and you make them into a buildable figure that looks like they are straight out of Minecraft, and that's what you do. Then there's promotional. Promotional are the ones that typically you can only get if you're buying at a Lego store or from the Lego website. It's most of the time spend $75 or more and you get this little set. And I mean, they're the most random things. They always have one, May the 4th. They always have something for Star Wars. They always have, and it's the most random thing. If there's an anniversary for Star Wars or something, they'll have that one out. But every month you can look up the Lego promotional calendar. Or if you're subscribed to the Lego magazine, I think they send that out. But that'll tell you exactly what you can get when.
Next we have is the minifigure pack. So the minifigure packs are very similar to the battle packs, but minifigure packs are universal across all genres, right? We've seen last year, Marvel released one with Thor, right? And what it usually is, it's just minifigures, right? The main point of this is minifigures, very similar to the battle pack. In fact, the battle pack is kind of what the replacement for the minifigure pack is, because the minifigure pack isn't as common. They don't put them out every year anymore. There's really not much else. It's usually 3 minifigures, but Marvel did 5, so I can't even say that. It's always $15. That's what it's been the last 2 years, so I can't say that. But inflation is probably going to be $20 next year, right? It's very similar to Battle Pack. That's all I can say for sure.
The next one we have is Microfighters. Basically, it's a minifigure next to, most of the time, just a ship or sometimes a speeder or something. Just some kind of thing. It's not unique to Star Wars. You got some in other categories where it'll be just a minifigure, probably at Lego City with like a tiny car, and it's nowhere near to scale. These are, sometimes they'll use in a unique minifigure. The minifigure is usually what's so cool about it. It's, if you ever go to the store to buy a last minute gift for your 5-year-old cousin, this is what you get. They're always $10. If you pay more than $10, you should have gone to somewhere else.
Then we have next the poly bag. So the poly bag is right what it says. It's a little bag. The contents of it vary often. So for a while, all poly bags really was just a minifigure, right? Star Wars usually just had, for their May 4th promotion, they would have a polybag minifigure and it would change every year, right? The Marvel still does polybags. For instance, this year they have Doctor Strange, except now a lot of polybags still have a minifigure, and then with the minifigure they have a little build. Doctor Strange polybag from this year, but as you can see, it has the little golden circle, like the portal that he opens, right? It has a little build with it, so now it has a little bit extra. Or what polybags can also be, like Star Wars does, is just a little micro build, right? Something that we could see potentially in an advent calendar, something just a couple pieces big, and that's all that it is, right? Those ones aren't as fun, but they're cost effective for our pieces and all that stuff too. So those are always there as well. And the last one we have is the 4+ set. This kind of ties into Microfighters because Microfighters came before 4+ sets, and then they saw Microfighters were pretty popular, and so they kind of extended it to 4+ sets. 4+ sets are meant primarily for the younger crowd, right? Legos were meant for that, but as Legos have kind of expanded into a older content, they've also kind of broadened their younger content. So the 4+ series, they usually contain bigger pieces, right? The sets not usually ever accurate to the source, right? Like an X-Wing, from 2 years ago, Poe Dameron's X-Wing, it barely even looked like an X-Wing at points, right? But it was easy to build. That's one of the biggest things. And it was big pieces. So for a 4-year-old, they wouldn't have the problem of, choking on any pieces. And that's what's very important about it. And then they usually have a minifigure or two. Unfortunately, the last 2 years, we've seen a big increase on prices for these. They've usually used to be a relatively low price, but everything's changing for prices, so we'll see how long that lasts. And then we have a couple of different honorable mentions. These are ones that they don't ever really make, but we've seen a couple of them. For instance, the one that I'm going to talk about first is the buildable characters. These are like these kinetic pieces that we saw Star Wars do, very similar to the Bionicle series, right? They weren't very popular, but they were at the same time. It was a hit and miss series. They just got rid of it because eventually it just died out, right? They weren't very popular.
The next one we have is Lego Art. Those are the ones you see. They're typically around $100. You can build like 3 different characters with them, but it's a flat pane, and all the pieces are just studs. So it's just a picture on the wall. I think they're intended for you to literally hang up and put on your wall as art. And there's 3 different builds that you can build with them for the most part. Some of them might have more, some might have less, but there's other ones that count as Lego Art, like the Wave. That counts as the Lego Art series because they made a Lego version of that. A couple other things, but those ones are just mainly sets that aren't only supposed to be for display, but that you could think of as real art, and then you just make them to a Lego set.
Yeah. And the last one we've got are like Lego bust. We've only ever seen a couple of these. Most recently, we see the Black Panther bust. This is due to passing of Chadwick Boseman. They're also hit and miss when they come out. They don't seem to be very popular. But for instance, the Darth Maul one that came out so many years ago, its worth is extraordinary, right? They're usually like these display. They're kind of like the display helmets, but it's like shoulders up, and they're much bigger than a helmet. But they don't, like I said, they've made very, very few of those. So there's not many examples for those. And then now we get into the actual why. Why do these have certain values increase, some decrease, some slow increase, all of that. So I'll get right into it. All right. So the first one we're going to talk about, or just in general, sets increase in value over time. As to why certain sets do, that's what we're here to talk about, obviously. So cost management is obviously easiest for smaller sets, right? They're cheaper. They come in these cheaper price points. Poly bags, micro fighters, minifigure packs, battle packs, right? Some play sets, certain brickheads, right? Those come at these cheaper price points. And because they do, when they come at these cheaper price points, because it's so already cheap, when they do retire, when people do increase them, like you buy a set, you sell on eBay 2 years, right? It retires, you want to sell on eBay, right? It was $20, but you put it up for $30. $30 isn't much of an increase, but you just made $10. And someone else is probably willing to pay $30 because that's not much of an increase. It's not this high price point. It's very affordable, and they can still get it at a relatively low price if they didn't get it when they could, right? And so you'll see a lot of battle packs, for instance, a lot of minifigure packs. A lot of them will go up in value right after retirement. They have the biggest boom after retirement. Now, this isn't always the correct path necessarily to take, because sometimes what we see is because they're so cheap and so affordable, when they're still in production, they can be overproduced, right? They're cheaper, and so people buy a lot of them. They're thinking, oh, I'll sell these when they're retired. Well, you bought 20 of them, so did everyone else, because they're so cheap right now. And so now I don't need to buy one on eBay. I already have 20 of them too that I'm trying to sell, right? That happens. It doesn't happen as often as you would think, but it does happen, right? So some sets that would normally have a big boom don't, because so many people bought them, right? And it happens with a lot of poly bags, for instance, because poly bags are usually only $5. It happens quite often. Then we touch on play sets. So like I said, play sets are a little bit of a weird thing to look at in investing, but these primarily have three things to keep in mind when being sought after to potentially invest in. The three things are the genre, the minifigures, and the worth, right? So the genre obviously matters, Star Wars, right? Or then, for instance, the subgenre, Clone Wars, like we talked about earlier in the previous video link. They usually are more popular because the age group that are into Lego Star Wars are usually into Clone Wars, right? So a lot of Clone Wars playsets just naturally increase value. Minifigures. When a set has a lot of minifigures, it's just well known. Minifigures are the most popular thing in a set. They just are. Not for every investor, not for every collector, but for the average, for the normal consumer for Lego, the minifigures are the normal, what you look for, right? And we'll talk more about that in the next part in the minifigure video, but that's another thing to look at. And the last one is the worth, right? When you buy a set, does it look worth it to you? Two things. You have the piece per price, right? So if you're paying $100, 1,000 pieces, you're paying 10 cents per piece. That's not bad. You're technically getting your money's worth, right? That's an example. But sometimes they use bigger pieces, and a set that's $35, you only have to use 200 pieces, but they use a lot of big pieces, and so it still turns out to be kind of worth it to you. Then those kind of just increase value. But if a set was overpriced to begin with, they're not going to increase value. They're going to decrease, right? We saw that with a lot of sets from this last year. In fact, people bought them and thought they would invest in them, and they're trying to sell them now, and because they were overpriced to begin with, they're not able to make $1 off of them. In fact, they're losing money off of them. So you got to kind of look at, is a set worth it, the actual build, and then the minifigures and the genre. You also have to keep in mind for play sets. It's very important. Play sets are one of the more popular ones to look at because those are the ones that get produced the most. At least right now, we can see how that changes in the years to come, but we'll see. And then lastly, we have the 18 plus sets. After we'll kind of touch on this a little bit more with the bigger ones. But 18 plus sets, one of the bigger things to look at is the accuracy and then the worth. Same thing like the play sets, the worth. Is it worth it, right? The Rex helmet. Is that worth $70 to you? That's kind of up for you to decide. Most people would agree that it is, right? And then the accuracy. Does it look accurate to the source? Because some diorama sets just look doggone awful. They don't look accurate at all. And when you buy a diorama set, 99% of the time, a diorama set or 18 plus set is for display. So you want it to look accurate. You don't want something goofy looking up on your shelf, right? So those are two things to look at. But to be honest, I would say, and I don't say this with 100% confidence, but I say this with 95% confidence, most 18 plus sets are going to increase in value due to their great display ability, right? 18 plus sets are meant for display. And so when people just want a great thing to display, it's going to increase in value, right? Because everyone wants cool things on their desk or on their office, right? And so 18 plus is great for that purpose.
Yes, Lego art. So that crap you see on the wall, it's all varying on really what it is and how many they produce. It's hit or miss a lot of the times, but you'd think like Mickey Mouse, yeah, he's so iconic. There's going to be a million people buying him. It's a great one. That retailed for $120, and it's still selling for $120, or sometimes even less than $120 because it was on sale at retail stores. So people are reselling it for $120 and making profit on it because they bought it for $100. The main thing about those is Lego thinks that everyone's going to buy a Mickey Mouse on the wall, and they are. So they produced a ton of those, and those ones didn't increase. Star Wars, they made one for the Sith. I believe it was Kylo Ren, Darth Vader, and Darth Maul. That one retailed for $120 and is going for about $170-ish right now. And that one was out 3 years ago. I think it retired 2 years ago or a year ago. It's not been retired for a long time. Really, on the art thing, it's hit or miss. If it's an iconic scene or an iconic character, for example, this Lego bust that they have right now with Wakanda Forever, that one, I bet you anything that's going up.
Because it's kind of overpriced, people don't want to pay $350 for it. And so right from the get-go, Lego brought it down in price to $200. They took a huge chunk of that off.
40% off.
People weren't willing to pay that. So again, the cost, effectiveness, the worth is a big part in all of these, especially today when inflation is such a big part and they're raising the prices more and more, it seems, every day. It's important to keep that in mind.
Yeah, I do take that back. If you did spend $350 on that Lego set, good luck. But I'm saying if you buy it for $210, I bet you in 5 years that's going to increase to $300 in 5 years. But anyways, it's hit or miss. It's if people love it, it's going to go up more likely. The next, I'm going to go into microfighters. The build is just throw that in the trash, honestly. I mean, sealed sets, these things don't go up in value a ton for the most part. The $10 sets, if they're good, they'll go up to $20. But if it's a very good minifigure, it will go up. A great example of this is the Ghost. This Lego set was $10, of course, because it is a microfighter. It went up to about $50. But if you're just looking at the minifigure and you just want to buy the minifigure goes for $40. The actual set itself does nothing at all. The set's just there. The only reason it would be more the fact that if you buy it with the set is because it's brand new and sealed. That's the only reason it'd be worth more. The minifigures, the whole worth of microfighters. Promotional. Those ones, I mean, if you're making a big purchase, if you're going to buy a UCS, a Master Builder, an Icon Series, anything over $150 and you're going to pay retail price for it, wait for a promotion unless you think it's retiring soon, and then just get a free set out of it. Like, for example, Sammy bought this random Pirates thing he got, I'd like to say January, February, and it's the most random set in the world, but it's a free set, you know? And last year, May the 4th, we both got I don't even remember her name. It's his aunt, Luke Skywalker's aunt, making blue milk in the kitchen It's the most random thing, but if you want it on eBay right now, it's $40.
Yep.
It was free, That's really it's free money right there, promotional. If you're buying something at retail price from Lego, buy it with a promotion. That's the only thing I'm going to say. Otherwise, the retailers have discounts typically.
For instance, the Death Star 2 May 4th promotion from this year. I got one, right? I bought the Justifier for the promotion, got the Death Star 2. It's worth $50, right? I didn't pay $1 for it technically. I just got $50 if I wanted to sell it. So that he's right. If you have the opportunity, jump on it, right?
Yeah, that's the only thing that I'd like to say. Lego. There's two reasons to go to a Lego store: promotions and availability. Sometimes there's sets that you can't find anywhere. Then you go to a Lego store to get it. And sometimes there's sets that are retail cost. If you get them, just get like that plus one more or two of those and get a promotion because those are free. Brickheads, you got those ones. Those ones have been going up in value a lot. Basically, the reason being I like to see is people like to collect them. Those are something they cost $20, $10 to $20. I think it's $15 to $25 now, typically, and you can just put them on your wall and have like 30 of them from different series. It's like Funko Pops, honestly. Lego Funko Pops.
I was gonna say.
That's a great one to have personally because you can display it with your box in the background, and if it goes up in value, you have a sealed set. And if it doesn't go up in value, you have a display. That right there, if you want some random display, that's a good one to invest in. If you like it and it's Brickheads, get it and just keep it sealed just to see. Advent calendars are a consistent up in value. You buy them right now, I believe it's like 15%. They'll always go up in the course of 1 year just because they're exclusive. And I mean, if you get something that has really cool minifigures or really cool this or that, it's going to go up like crazy. Like 2014 and 2018, I believe, went up like crazy because they had some really good sets. Sorry. UCS and Master Builder series, as I said before, it's technically exclusive to Star Wars, but really Icon series and UCS. Icon series goes hand in hand with these two. So if it has a lot of minifigures, it's closer to Master Builder series. The ones with Master Builder series that have a ton of minifigures almost always will go up in value because there's going to be one or two freaking minifigures that somebody wants for some reason. And out of 21, they have to buy the whole set. Oh, wow, you might as well just have the whole freaking awesome set. And it's a cool scene, like the Mos Eisley Cantina. That's an iconic scene. I mean, not in that way is it portrayed in every movie, but it's portrayed in every trilogy, if I'm not mistaken. It's really good looking. And it's just everywhere. UCS, as we said before, it's supposed to be realistic. These ones always go up in value. And they're usually very expensive. The cheapest one I've ever seen before last year in June, they increased the prices, was Luke's Land Speeder for $200, was technically an Ultimate Collector Series item. I think that's the cheapest one I've ever seen, unless the droids are technically. I don't think they are.
Those ones, I don't know what those are considered.
They say BD1 is, but BD1's not. Don't believe their lies. It's not UCS. Anyways, they're gonna go up in value. If you want to spend $300 on a cool looking Lego set, like I bought that the Republic gunship, that's cool looking. If I bought something that was more to scale, if I bought say that AT-AT, I opened it, built it, put it in my background, and then I sold it 10 years later, I'm gonna get profit even though I bought it sealed and sold it open because they come out with so few of them and they don't make a ton of them and they're just good looking every single time with, of course, some exclusions. But like minifigure sets with like the Daily Bugle, that's going to go up just because of how many minifigures you got and how iconic of a scene and how many different villains there are. It's just so versatile.
And then, that like you said, a lot of it, like the main thing to look at is the worth. Are you getting your price per piece, which I think is an irrelevant thing to look at. I think you look at the build, right? You think that set's worth $800 because there's a good chance if you do, most people would agree with you. And if most people agree with you, then they think it's worth investing in. So that's something to keep in mind, right? And there's always these little things, and that's what we're going to get onto the next video about, but the minifigures, right? That's an important thing for a lot of them. For sets like the UCS or the Brickheads, they don't have minifigures. It's just the displayability is a big thing for people. If you see my shelf right now, I've got freaking 10 different sets on there. If you see the table, the next table, 2 tables next to me, got a crap load of Legos. just out because I want them displayed, right? So displayability is a big one to keep in mind, right? It's a lot of preferential stuff in this, but to be honest, if you like it, there's a good chance other people are gonna like it, and that's the nice thing about Lego. I didn't mention this earlier. Most of it's going to increase in value. There's very few far in between that decrease in value, very few that even stay the same. Almost all of them, and this is true, look it up. Almost all of them do increase in value over time. They just do, and that's because of inflation, obviously. But if you keep a set sealed, there's like a really high chance in 5 years you can sell it and make some sort of profit off of it.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, there you have it. Of course, there's some other little sets, like we said, the buildable characters or the bust. Those ones are random, because they've made so many far random ones in between like that. We don't really have any way of telling you, yeah, those are going to increase, or no, those are not, because we don't even know when they're going to make the next one, right? So those are something to keep in mind. But yeah, you have anything else you want to hit on, Afton?
Nope, that's about it.
Yep. So with that, we hope you guys enjoyed this. Don't forget to hit that subscribe and like if you're on YouTube. Download and follow if you're on podcast. Don't forget to look out for the next one. We'll be talking about the minifigures. I promise that's what's coming next. The last one, we talked about the genres and subgenres of Lego. So go watch that one if you guys don't mind. With that, we hope you guys enjoyed this, and we'll see you all in the next one. See ya.